Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Selden, and today's guest is Kevin Gaskell. Recognized as the man who fixes businesses, Kevin Gaskell has an impressive track record in building and leading successful companies. As managing director of Porsche, Lamborghini, and BMW, Kevin led hugely successful turnarounds and business growth. Today, he remains actively involved in numerous companies worldwide as both an investor and founder, including the UK's fastest growing B2B fiber network provider and Radical Motorsport, the world's largest race car manufacturer. Gaskell's entrepreneurial approach to business has earned him numerous accolades. He was recognized as one of the UK's top 40 leaders, reflecting his exceptional ability to inspire teams, to transform companies, and to achieve extraordinary results. His focus on developing innovative strategies and building high-performance cultures has been instrumental in driving business growth and success. Alongside his business success, Kevin has climbed the world's highest mountains, walked the North and South Poles, and in 2020 and 2025 was a member of the crew setting a new world record for the fastest row across the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. He has played international cricket, but now relaxes by playing in a rock band. His most recent book, Catching Giants, was shortlisted for Business Book of the Year in 2023. So welcome, Kevin.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, great to have you. That was an impressive bio that we just went over. So very lucky to have you here with us.
You know what they say about bios? Your mother believes it and your wife laughs at it. Never
Yeah.
take it too seriously.
No, I love the part about relaxing by playing in a rock band. I don't know. Yeah, that's really awesome. So, welcome. Just for everybody, we will be covering the topic of leading under sustained pressure, which I'm sure many of the viewers and listeners can take to heart. And I'm sure a lot of people really experience this in their day-to-day lives. So, we will get started. And if you can, I think where people will really internalize this is that in today's world, there are a ton of different pressures in the business world. Some are in the moment pressures and some are sustained and constant. How do people approach the sustained type of pressure where it's not just a crunch period that's grit through it and push forward? It's a pressure that just continuously builds on itself and never seems to end.
Yeah, the secret is to recognize that short-term pressure is exactly that. And you tend to get through it on adrenaline and some heroic actions and a lot of energy focused on the challenge. But long-term pressure means you have to think differently. You move away from firefighting and you actually develop systems and a culture and support network so that people can operate at that level in a sustained way and they feel that they've got comfort and support beneath them. So you can't expect people to go out and do it on their own. Rather, we design the business and shift the business so that people recognize that the processes are there, the systems are there, and we run on systems.
How does leadership make that mindset shift when you're moving from short-term pressure to long-term? Because what you said, one, I love, and two, I see it all the time, and it's very difficult, in my opinion, for leaders to get out of the firefighting mode and into the systemic fixes mode. So when a leader is just firefighting all the time and they can't seem to make that switch to, I should really pause, reflect, and figure out what systems need to fix. So this is a long-term strategy. How do they really flip that switch in their mind?
The key is clarity of objective. That's the absolute key. What is it that we're setting out to achieve? And what will it look like when we get there? How will people see us? How will people experience our business, or how will our team perform? How do we each play a part in that? And how do we support each other to do that? So long-term success is about, I said a moment ago, about making it systems and processes. But the switch, the key is having that absolute clarity of objective. And one of the things that I see when I see businesses that start to fall apart is when I ask the leaders, what is it you're setting out to achieve? I either get a number of answers or I don't get an answer. So it's that clarity, because once you've got that clarity, and you have to spend time to get that clarity. I work with teams, and in the end, we come up with not mission statement or vision. All that stuff is MBA speak, and I have an MBA. I'm not arguing against MBA, but it's about making it real for the team. It's about making it real for the whole team in the business. Everybody at every position in the team has to know what they're expected to achieve to drive the business to that success. So it's the clarity Once you have clarity, then you can give the authority and the accountability to the team. So as the leader, you can share the pressure. You're not carrying it all. You can give it away, give the authority away, give the accountability away, and let people contribute.
And I think it's so important for the overall leader who sets that vision, that master plan, whatever we want to call this, because a lot of times what you'll see is that in the room with all of the other leaders, everybody says, this is what we're set out to do. This is the vision that we have. Everybody leaves and takes away some different view of what that is. And the leader
Yep.
that started that never does a check-in. They just go, okay, everybody left and everybody's on the same page. And you find out, to your point, there is no clarity and people aren't on the same page. And then everybody just goes and diverts to do what they think is right, but
Yeah.
doesn't strive towards the vision.
I like to build a culture where the whole team can contribute because people are incredible. Ordinary people can achieve extraordinary results and will do so if we are all working together as a team. And so when I say to people, we need to write down the plan and put it on the wall, I literally mean it. I like to handwrite it because then it's friendly, people can relate to it, but we handwrite on the wall. This is what success will look like. And it's not numbers. Park the numbers. It's not about the numbers. It's about this is how we want to be. These are the principles we will apply. And these are the priority tasks that we're going to perform to get us there. And that's the system and process that allows people to really make a contribution. I've never met anybody who wants to do a bad job. I've met a lot of people who are doing a bad job because they don't know what's expected of them. And if they don't know what's expected of them, the pressure in the business ramps up because the resource isn't being focused on the right things. And so it is about clarity. It is about having a plan where everybody can see how they make a difference. And by making a difference, they relieve the pressure.
And I think the two things that you mentioned, in my opinion, are so important is one, it's good to know where we're going and where we want to be. And it doesn't have to be super metric based, but we understand the end goal, but we're not being very prescriptive on how to get there. We set
Exactly.
principles and values, we set priorities, but as you said, we let the individuals who will do amazing things figure out that how to get there because we all may take a different path to get there, but amazing people will find amazing ways to get to that endpoint. It's on us to make sure that they understand the rules around it. And then the other thing that I loved was the priorities, because I have found, especially today, we don't know how to prioritize. Leaders don't know how to communicate the priorities. When nothing is a priority, everything's a priority.
Exactly. When I put a plan on the wall, people say, oh, it's so simple. Yeah, but it might have taken us 3 months to get it that simple. We might have been really working at this. We interrogate our business to understand where are the key points that we really have to address. Because pressure and crisis is a symptom of not having clarity. And so if we get the clarity and we get the plan, the crisis, the pressure goes down because people know what they're doing. They know what they're expected to achieve. And my job as a leader, anybody's job as a leader, is not to be a genius, some
Mm-mm.
genius business fixer. It's to create genius. And what I mean by that is recognize they say everybody is at least 5% genius. So if you've got 5% genius in everybody, Einstein was 65% genius, but everybody is 5% genius. For every 20 people I have working together to achieve those same deliverables, those same priorities, I've got 100% genius. And so that's why systems and processes, as boring as they sound, are so important. It's so important.
They are.
We work together, share the load, take out the pressure.
They are extremely important. And a lot of times, yeah, they can be boring, but they're what sustain the culture and sustain the business long term. Because a lot of times these businesses latch on to their one fixer, and then that one
Yeah,
fixer is going to leave at some point, whether they win the lottery or they retire or they find a different job, whatever it is. And then you don't have that wedge that holds everything in place and allows us to continue moving forward and not slide back. And when you don't have those systems, that's what that wedge is. And everything slides back as soon as that go to person's gone. And then you're just rebuilding constantly instead of focusing on progress.
sure. We talk about pressure situations.
Yeah.
Look at the military. The military is the epitome of pressure. If you're
Hmm.
going into a warfare situation, that's the epitome of pressure. I'm not a soldier, but what do they drill into soldiers? They drill systems and
Yep.
processes and training and behavior. And this is why we do it, because we all know and we can fall back on that. And that's why under pressure, I don't believe people rise to pressure. You might get suddenly somebody's brilliant in it for a situation, but resilience beats brilliance every time. And resilience comes from that training, that process, that coordination. I trust you because I know what you're going to do. You know what I'm going to do. We address it together.
So when that pressure is building, what I've seen before, and I'd love your opinion on this, is that we do a lot of things, including write things on the wall, whether it's on a piece of paper, we handwrite it, or we literally put it on the wall and it's part of what we have as our environment. We have these values and these principles and maybe these priorities and all of these things that we preach. And when pressure increases, a lot of times that goes by the wayside. So, what
Yeah.
are some of those things that you see generally get pushed off first when the pressure increases? And how can people go about ensuring that we stick to those systems instead of going into firefighting, the sky is falling mode?
The first thing that typically fails is communication. Because if you don't have clarity of objective and you don't have a series of priorities, people respond differently. You get an individual interpretation of pressure, of what the priority is. And the communication around that confuses people. It becomes an issue in its own right. Poor
Right.
communication creates more pressure. The second thing that fails typically is respect, because we don't treat each other with the same respect as we do if we're working alongside a colleague to achieve a goal. And we almost feel as if we're in competition with that colleague, even though we know we're in a crisis situation. So respect is key. It's trusting and understanding your colleague, your boss, your direct reports, and giving them the information they need to work on the same set of priorities. So the two things that fall apart really falls down to communication. Communication falls apart. And that's why the best leaders, it's a classic statement, stay calm under pressure. You
Yep.
need to stay calm because somebody taught me a long time ago, some things are urgent, some things are important. Very few things are urgent and important at the same time. But those that are, you need to deal with them, and everybody needs to deal with them. But it's staying calm, prioritizing, and understanding where we're going and why we're going there. It's about communication.
And they always say that it's easy to be a good leader when things are calm and things are just going through the motions, but it's very difficult to be a good leader when things are in chaos and the pressure is high because those are the ones who then can stay calm, keep their team calm, keep communication directed towards the end goal and not have everybody run out in a bunch of different directions. So I think you were spot on with having those leaders that do remain calm because it's so difficult to do, but they're really the ones that stand out among everybody else.
Yeah, and the piece of staying calm is focusing on the right information. There's only one version of the truth. There's only one version of the truth. So let's focus on the right information. Let's be clear and understand what that information is, because a lot of noise means that under pressure, we don't know which way to go. The
Right.
classic, and something that took me a long time to understand, the Apollo space missions, you watch the film, they have a Capcom. They have one guy who speaks to the crew. That's it. Everything comes to him. One guy speaks to, because if everyone's speaking to the crew
Yeah.
and the crew are in a crisis situation, it becomes impossible. So what I try to do, if I'm running a business that's in difficulty or I'm in another situation where it's high stress, is we calm down the communication. We maintain the clarity. We work on real facts and we show respect. We listen because people have a response to how they interpret that information. But it's then my job to communicate to the team, this is the way we're going, this is what we're
Yep.
going to focus on. I'm Capcom. That's my job.
And that Capcom person is so important because you touched on this also before, where when pressure increases and stress increases, it's very easy for everybody to go back into defensive mode. And we're in this position because Kevin did this or Josh did this. And it's easy to get into blame and finger pointing mode instead of being forward focused and understanding for the good of the business. It doesn't matter who did what to get us here. We need to make sure that we are going forward to fix the problem. And I feel like having that North Star, that Capcom person that
Mhm.
keeps everybody focused on where the goal is extremely important, or else everybody then goes back in their silos and focuses on their little ownership area and then just starts pointing fingers outwardly.
Sure. And the way we manifest that in the business is depend on the level of stress, but try not to operate in great stress.
Yeah.
When we've got an urgent situation, then we do spend time that the leadership team will sit together and we will debate and discuss openly what the issues are, and the ideas will come forth, and then we'll agree on a course of action. Because what's critically important is that we're deciding which way we're going. We're not reacting to what's happening. So we need to maintain our clarity on moving towards the objective, the goal that we've defined. But as a team, we discuss it and we treat each other with respect. People can say what they like. I have some really tough feedback from some managers at certain times. Within that room, we realize people are giving that feedback in order to contribute to the situation. And we discuss it. We agree which way we're going. As we walk out of that room, everybody goes that way. There's no excuse for going out and saying, I know that's what they said, but I'm going to do this. No, we don't do that, because that creates further pressure, because it creates uncertainty and the team get confused. And it comes back to communication.
It's so critically important that doesn't happen. And I was just reading something that refers to that as the shadow culture, where, the culture of what you have in the room is everybody speaking up, everybody aligning. And then as soon as you leave, there's those two or three people that go off to the side and I know that's what we said, but this is really what we need to go do. And I know that's the system in place, but that doesn't work. And so we're going to go this route. And that is just so detrimental to the rest of the team because, as you said, it just adds the pressure and it now takes these resources out of the game that everybody aligned on because they're going and doing these things instead. And it's just such a sign of an unhealthy culture. But the leadership group needs to be aware that it exists so they can start closing that gap and really have that aligned path forward that they all align on in that room.
Yeah, I've had a situation recently where we've had a couple of new people join the business and they haven't fully bought into the culture yet. And they have their ideas, and that's fine. And they haven't yet realized, and I'm not running this business, I'm an observer. They haven't yet realized that the opportunity is there for them to speak their mind, but they can't walk out of the room and do something completely different. They can't do that because it confuses everybody.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. Now, if it's not an environment that has enough safety that people feel like they're comfortable saying everything in the room, I feel like that's a different conversation. But everybody needs to understand that they can speak up and they should speak up in the room. And
Yeah,
what's important is that people are heard and listened to. It doesn't mean we're always going to go with their idea, but maybe next time we go with their idea, right? So always speak up. But it's difficult and frustrating to be in that room and see people who refuse to speak up and then wait until you're outside of that room and then you really hear their opinion on what needs to happen because one, it leads to issues with communication and confusion for the team, and two, it could have maybe brought everybody in a different direction. Maybe it is the right way to go, but you're now again creating this confusion and this divide because you chose to wait until outside the room to actually say something.
sure. And that just doesn't work.
No. Now, we talk a lot about in the moment or getting into these high pressure situations, what we should go do once you're in these situations and things are starting to go sideways. So, all of these kind of ideal situations that we've talked about aren't happening. People are succumbing to the pressure. So, you're now in this environment. What does recovery from that kind of situation look like? And what are things that leaders can do to regain control of the ship going off course to get it back to where it needs to be?
Yeah, part of it is a rhythm in the communication. So whether that's daily briefing, weekly briefing, monthly briefings, and I've done all of those depending on the level of crisis in a business. But there's also the rhythm of taking a break and letting people catch their breath. Because whilst we can run on adrenaline for a short period of time, we're all human and
Mhm.
people do need a break. And decisions and thought processes get suboptimal when people get very tired. So for me, scheduling rests, scheduling a break is a key part of working hard. I don't want the team to be whacked. That
Right.
doesn't help.
No.
So we have to schedule recovery time. And sometimes that's as simple as saying to somebody, listen, turn your phone off 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Turn your phone off and don't turn it on again until 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want you checking emails. Just take a break. Just go and see your family. Go and take a weekend off like normal people do. Right through to sometimes when you've been through a very trying period, saying to a senior executive, mate, go and take a week. Take a week. And it's not because you are weak, it's because you are strong. And sometimes you're too strong, as in you won't give yourself a break.
Right.
So scheduling that recovery is a key part of maintaining the resilience of the business. I said it earlier on, brilliance is great, but resilience beats brilliance. You can have brilliance over short term, but long-term development, long-term recovery, long-term success is about resilience because the knocks come all the time, crisis times, and then they go away, but then there's another one comes along and another one. And at the moment, the world's a tough place. And I have young managers saying to me, wow, Kev, and I say, listen, mate, I've seen it before more than once, more than twice, more than three times. You just keep doing what we're doing and we'll get through it. But look after yourself, make sure you recover, give yourself a break, take a breather, and then let's go again.
Yeah, I think what you said makes so much sense. And for whatever reason, it's so difficult for people to do and to internalize. Because, in my opinion, I feel like everybody is so afraid to take the short term loss because nobody wants to lose. And a lot of the people that we hire in these companies are type A people who want to be in there. They're strong people. They want to win all the time. And to your point, I have never seen an organization that has perfect systems that still don't get those knocks in every once in a while because it's like a roller coaster.
Sure.
And you're going to be at those valleys sometimes, you're going to be at the peaks sometimes. And that's where resilience comes in. But sometimes you do need to just pause and take a break. And these people that may be your go to people or maybe the people who you rely on the most, you need to go and have those conversations and send them away for a weekend, a week off, whatever it is, because at some point they will break. We either wait
Yep.
it out and we won't have them because they naturally break, or we can force the break on them to say, hey, I see you going down the wrong path, or you're being too strong, or you're not fully here. Why don't you take that break? And everybody's so afraid to go do that because I don't want to lose them today, even though losing them today may be the right move to ensure the progress that we need in the future.
Sure. And sometimes we use tricks to get around that. I have a technique I've used occasionally where I've sent something to my executives' home, invited them to a long weekend at a certain hotel with their spouse. So make
Wow.
sure the spouse sees it because then the spouse will track them out
Yeah.
because we just want them to take a break. And
Yeah.
I know the people who go, they're just going to work and work. Sometimes you need to catch your breath. And then I get the best from you, really, because you
Right.
come back all charged up, ready to go again.
I think one other thing I'd love to hear from you is in the stress and the high pressure situations and the chaos, it is sometimes very difficult for leaders to make, I would say make a good decision, but in general, just make a decision. And a lot of times, I believe it's because of fear. Things are already high pressured enough. What if I
Yeah.
make the wrong decisions? What if I do
Yeah.
this? And people react to no decisions a lot of times even worse than a bad decision because we can learn from a bad decision and improve. How do you recommend people in these high stress situations to really latch onto a proper decision making process to be able to move
Yeah.
forward?
Yeah. It's about making sure people understand that inaction, indecision, is in itself a decision. I've decided not to do anything because I'm worried about it. No, that doesn't work. And it's a case of saying to them, look, we can either go left or we go right. And maybe it's a 50-50 call, so let's call it. But when we go that way, we'll give it our best shot. And if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. I keep saying to people, when we make a decision and it doesn't work out, that's fine. That's part of life. What we do is we back up and we adjust and we go again. Because by going in that route, we have learned something. We've
Right.
explored and we've learned. So we don't lose. We either win because it works or we learn. And that learning is important. But what's key is that we decide fast, we move fast, and we learn fast. Because in a difficult situation, time is critical. And so let's get on and do it. Let's not be afraid. I will give you the cover. I'll give you an umbrella. You'll be safe. And I give you the authority and the accountability to make that decision. If you think it's going wrong, stick your hand up and say, I think this is going wrong. And we'll come and we'll help. But don't be afraid to make the decision because that's when things really start to go wrong because we've lost the energy, we lose the momentum, and indecision kills momentum. And
100%.
momentum is key. People want to see change. If we're in a difficult situation, people want to see change. So let's keep it going. Let's not be afraid to make a mistake. That's part of it.
How does a leader change their mindset, though, especially as they're building a culture to be able to create that umbrella and that support for their organization when something like that happens? Because I've seen so many other leaders, especially upper leaders, that their organization's now in this high stress situation where they need to make a decision, they need to move forward. And rather than creating that umbrella for their organization, they're also freaking out a little bit because of it and not enabling the possibility of making the wrong decision and being able to back up and fix it. How do they change their own mindset so they're not stifling the momentum that their team has?
It's tough to change your own mindset. Courage, I would say it's about courage and about confidence, not about arrogance. Arrogance is a terrible sin.
Yeah.
It's about confidence, and confidence based upon what we've said: clarity of objective, open communication, working with facts, and then being confident. Now, if you're still not confident, then I've spent the last 20 years being invited by senior leaders to go in and help them
Mm.
to deal with this stuff. And they say, it's easy for you. You're not emotionally attached. I become very emotionally attached very quickly. I went into a business that had 10 years of losses
Wow.
and had gone through 13 rounds of retrenchment, of redundancy. And it was a unionized business and it was really suffering. And I was the last shot. The banks held the keys. And the bank said to me, Kev, could you go in, go and give the management some support?
Mm.
And I worked with that team to help them realize that they were actually very good at what they did, but what they hadn't done is taken the big decisions to move the thing forward. And
Mm.
so I gave them the cover from the board and from the banks and said, you make the decisions that you know need making. And we got from 10 years of losses, we got that business back into profit in about 13 or 14 months.
Wow.
They were the same people, but they made the decisions. And some were big calls. We closed down a certain factory. We didn't lose the people, we just closed down that factory because it was inefficient. So we made some big decisions that they had resisted making. And I said, why didn't you do that before? And they said, because the business had spent $30 million on that factory and we didn't feel we could do it. I said, yeah, but it's killing us. So stop, get rid of it, accept the loss, move on. And so the courage thing is almost about sometimes having somebody to speak to. I have one or two CEOs who just use me as a sounding board now. They just talk to me and I'll talk them through a point. I won't tell them what to do because if I'm telling them what to do, they're not going to grow. But I will allow them to share their concerns, their pros and cons, and just guide them to make a decision and then away they go. The courage comes from believing somebody's got your back, believing somebody
Right.
trusts you. I don't know what it's like in the USA, but over here, soccer team managers, some of them can last 3 weeks and they're gone. That's a crazy situation. You can't build a team or a successful business on that basis. So when people are afraid for their jobs, then, well, as a board, you either make a decision, you either ask them to leave or you protect them. Let them feel that they're protected and trusted, and then they can get on and do their job. When people are afraid for their job, it doesn't work. So help them, build the confidence, give them some courage, and let them go.
And that's why it's so important to set aside that ego and that arrogance, like you said, because when the leader is coming from a spot that builds that trust in the organization and they can sit back, as you said, and said, I'm going to protect you and I trust you to make the right decisions. I trust you to go forth and do what you need to go do. The amount of courage that gives them and the amount of just emotional support and energy that gives them is unthinkable.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And you'll notice in this conversation, I haven't once mentioned numbers.
Right.
It's not about chasing numbers. It really isn't. If you want to score goals, become a great team, and then you'll score goals. Don't set your whole stall out to score goals because then you have 10 goal kickers. It doesn't work. Let's be a great team. Let's have the defense, the attack, the midfield. Let's make sure we're working properly together, and then we will score goals. And we need to score some goals. But that is the result. That is the score. It's not the game. And the game is clarity, communication, teamwork, trust, honesty, working together, using people's 5% genius.
Kevin, I've loved everything that we've heard so far. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share with everybody?
Now, I just want to say that sustained high performance, and whether that's in a crisis situation or not, it's not always about being in crisis. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency, clarity, and managing energy and focusing energy on the right priorities over a period of time. And if you can do that, you stay away from the crisis. The whole key is not to get into crisis in the
Right.
first place because we know where we're going, we know how we're going to get there, We work as a team, we trust each other, and then we go out and we deliver. And then we score the goals.
That's great. And just to remind everybody, this has been Kevin Gaskell. I truly appreciate everything that you brought here. If anybody wants to get a hold of him or learn more, I'll have all of his contact information and any links that he wants to share with everybody in the YouTube video description there and all the postings. You can like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on all the podcast platforms, to my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Lead in Quarters. And you can email me with any questions or ideas you may have for future episodes or any questions you may have for Kevin, and I can get you all together. You can email me at leadingquarters@gmail.com. But Kevin, again, I feel like this is a topic that resonates with everybody. And as you've said, whether you get into the chaos and into the high pressure situations or not, because the goal is to not really get there in the first place, the punches come. We have peaks, we have valleys. At some point, you have to build this resiliency that you spoke of. And with resiliency being so important and these situations being so important, especially today, I think this topic will really resonate with a lot of people and cause them to reflect on how they handle themselves and how their leaders handle the situations in these high stress situations. And so I think what you've shared today is going to be really critical for a lot of these leaders moving forward. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's been fun talking to you.